Okay, we don't have too many people here because a lot of people are traveling or in classes, but next week I'm sure we'll be back up to speed. I want to start tonight with a story. I always like starting with a story before I introduce our guest speaker. The story is beautiful. Thursday night, I got a call from a friend of mine who comes into town every so often to visit his family. Now, he likes to call me, we like to get together, he likes cars. He's a very wealthy man, he has very expensive cars. And he told me that Thursday night that he had a beautiful new car he wanted to show me. So we agree on a restaurant, and he comes to the restaurant. I get there a little bit ahead of him. And he comes in and he's visibly upset. The flashing red light is coming on his dash that his car is now having a tire problem. He's got to travel back at least 800 miles to get back home. And he's going to be leaving, this is Friday now, he's going to be leaving on Saturday. Now, he's a bit pretentious, this man, and he would agree with that. So I'm not saying anything he wouldn't agree with that. He's very wealthy and he has at least a dozen very expensive cars. Now, he goes to a German mechanic where he lives, and this mechanic, you have to speak 2 languages just to enter the shop, you have to wear a suit, and then he decides on whether or not he's going to accept you as a client. I'm not exaggerating. I'm not exaggerating. This is a whole big deal at this level. So he's coming into the table, and he's really upset because he's thinking, now, what am I going to do? Because according to his German mechanic, there's only a few shops in the world who can handle this particular car and the tire and the rim. Now, I realize I have a good sensor when I can hear the truth and not hear the truth, okay? So I'm picking up that this is not really true. And I'm sitting there and he's listening to him because he's called a few high-end stores here in town, and they were closed on Friday, these high-end tire stores. So now he's thinking, what am I going to do? Because I only have 3 left, and I'm not sure where I'm going to take it. And now, he knows a little bit about what I do. But he's very skeptical. He's a brain person. He doesn't think that people can really do this, even though I've done this for him several times before, and he thinks it's just magic or it's just luck. So I said, look, you've got nothing to lose. Let's not waste time because it's getting late, and you want to leave tomorrow, on Saturday. So he said, okay, what do we do? So I write a statement about what he wants. And then I come up with a place I was thinking about, a tire store that could actually possibly help. According to the spirit information I was getting, this could actually work. So I know if he sees the name, he's going to discount anything I do. So I put a number next to the name of the store. He puts numbers next to all of his companies that he's going to call. He scrambles them all up with a stop and something else not here, and he gives it to me and he says, all right, scan, give me an answer. So I give him an answer. There were only 2 numbers that came up. Okay? One of the 2 was the first number that I gave him. Now, I want you, because this is the actual piece of paper that I wrote about. This is the store that came up. This is true. Okay, this is true. Now, this guy recoils in his seat because this is a $250,000 car. And he's saying, you're telling me that that company can repair my car. And I'm saying, I'm not saying it, God is saying this. He's like recoiling back again. He's saying, are you going to put up, I mean, if they damage my tire and rim, are you going to give me $4,000 to repair it? Now, $4,000 is not cheap. Okay? But you're either going to trust this or not trust it, put up or shut up. So I said, I'd do it, and I meant it. I would do it. So now he's going, okay, so where do we go? Well, I just happened to see a Walmart on the way over to the restaurant. And I asked my spirit, is that a good place to go? It said yes. So I said, I know where to go. So he gets in his car, I follow him with my SUV. We get over there, and you got to see this picture. He comes in with a $250,000 car into Walmart, and he's behind the cars that are barely able to pass inspection. Now, it was like dead silence. When he pulls up into the tire lane, it's dead silence. I mean, everyone in the shop just went completely silent. It was like a storm coming out of nature. All of these guys, all the mechanics come running out. They're swarming over him like a group of ants. Now, there was a good guy there. There was a service representative there. His name was Joseph. And Joseph pulls my friend aside. He goes, are you nuts bringing your car here? These people are going to ruin your car mechanically if they touch anything on your engine. They can't repair anything on your car. He's going, wait a minute. He's going, nothing about my engine. It's about the tire. So now Joseph is looking at the tire and he's going, we happen to have 2 people that are trained this way, who can handle something like this. And for the first time in the year, both of these two men are working here today. He goes, how did you know that they were here? He points over to me and he goes, that guy told me to come here. So now everyone runs over to me. They say, how in the world did you know that these two guys are here? And I said, I didn't. His Spirit told me. And now we're talking about God, Spirit, and I find the two mechanics that can do this work. And I look at one of them and I say, you're the better of the two, so I would ask you, please, you're responsible for this work. Have the other one watch you, work with you. Would you agree to that? They said, no problem. So they say, just go into Walmart and wait while we take care of this. This guy is like dumbfounded. He's completely dumbfounded. He's like glued to the window watching what they're doing. And I said, look, we're in Walmart. Let's walk around. You know, breathe, let's walk around, let's take a look. So he looks around, he's only talking about his car. Now he's looking at stuff. He's looking at stuff in the aisles. And he's going like, wow, he hasn't been in a Walmart for 25 years. He's going like, holy mackerel, they've got good stuff here. He's going like, I can get this for my mother, I can get this for my girlfriend. So he's loading up 2 carts full of stuff that he's going to give us Christmas presents. This guy's having a good time. He's having a good time. So we come back to the service bay about an hour later or so. They give him the bill. Now, with his German mechanic, this would be $300-400 minimum, just to look at it. And not even touching the tire, minimum. Give him the bill. Zero. Zero. No money. At the worst, it would have been $30, okay? $30. And he's looking at this like they gave him $500,000. He's going like, why aren't you charging me? And they said, we've never had a car like this come into our shop. They said, this was magnificent. This was the best experience we've had. Thank you for coming into our shop. This was remarkable. This was remarkable. Okay. Now, the story is not about that. It's not about that. It's not about me. The story is about the why. Why do I do the work that I do? Why do you do the work that you're doing? Why am I attempting to train you so you get to the why? I do my why because I want to know the truth. I want to know the truth in every situation. I don't care what it is. I want to know what God wants for me, wants for you. And if I can know that truth, then I'm free. And I can always do what's right, and I can always go in the right direction, and as we see, it can make things go a whole lot easier. Now, the worst that could have happened to me is losing $4,000. That's nothing, okay, in terms of what this story could bring to you. It was worth $4,000, the story. I didn't know how it was going to turn out, but I was confident that God would lead us in the right direction. Never have to worry about that. Now, that was only money. Well, we have a person here tonight who has done a lot of thinking about the why. It's taken him on a magnificent journey through some incredible countries. Okay? And he started off by thinking about the how and the what, but then when he got to the why, it really changed his life. That's Josh, okay, and his mother, Mrs. Weiss. Now, you may recognize these two people because when you go to the Holistic Fair in Addison, Felicia and Tony, well, they're son-in-law and daughter of Mrs. Weiss. Josh is the youngest child that she has, and he's the most unique of the group. I can say that. He's the most unique. Not different or better in any other ways, just that he's unique, and he chose to follow and find God in his journeys. So I want to bring him up and let us hear about what he's done to do that. This is a remarkable story. So Josh.
Well, to give you a bit of background first, I'm from Las Vegas, Nevada, and I used to be a trader of stocks. I did that for 6 years. I made a tremendous amount of money, and then I proceeded to lose all that money. It was a very difficult period of time, and after my father passed away, I moved back home, and then decided to move to Israel, looking for new everything. I get to Israel, and I start as a job as a waiter, because I have to make some money, and I'm not so great at the language yet. And 4.5 months goes by. It was some of the most difficult work I've ever done, physically exhausting, but very rewarding. And I would move from that to construction. And I worked construction for 4.5 months. Same thing, really rewarding, but dangerous, and I felt I could do something else. I then went on to internet marketing, where I was making a lot more money, very good money by Israeli standards, but I was staying people for a living. And I thought, I'm here to make the world a better place, not a worse place. Around this time, investments I had made years earlier from trading started to pan out, and I was able to take some time off and figure out the why. What am I doing here? How does it all work? What's the next step? I spent about 2 years doing carpentry classes, dance classes, acting classes, playing baseball, and I still wasn't finding that path. I've been, I think, a patient of Dr. Berman's for 8 years, 9 years? It's been a long time.
It's been a while.
Been a while. And at around this time, I have a good friend of mine named Freeman. Freeman's father's a libertarian, hence his name. And Freeman tells me he's going to go on this trip through Latin America for 6 months. I think at the time I said, have a good time, not something I would ever want to do. What am I going to do with myself all day? Well, we joked as time went on, and I said, maybe I'll join you for some of it. He said, you're invited. So I call up Gary and talk to him about it. He says, I think it's a great idea. And supposedly, so did my spirit. And I go, okay. I trusted it and took a leap. And I decided to commit to traveling for at least a month. If I didn't like it after that, I'd come home, nothing lost. And I remember being on the plane in Miami, and the door's still open. And I think, this is my chance. I got to get off this plane. And the door shuts, and all that anxiety turns into nervous excitement. It's like, okay, I made the commitment. Here we go. Upon arriving in Mexico, I realized that all the high school, I remembered just about nothing from all the high school Spanish I had. I could count to 10, and I knew donde está el baño. But through hand gestures, I somehow managed to get every time where I needed to get to. And when I first met up with my friend, he had planned out the whole trip. So I didn't have to do anything or make any serious decisions. And as time went on, it ended up being more and more incredible and challenged more and more of my beliefs and perceptions of the world. And I began to create my own philosophy on life. And I also thought a tremendous amount about my family and what the next step would be. I didn't realize that I'd have to go get lost in Latin America in order to find what I should do with myself. So after about 4 months in, I am having the time of my life. It's profound. I'm getting incredible answers to these questions that I was lost on for so long. And I get an email that my mom is in bad shape in the hospital in Dallas, in the intensive care unit, and I have to come home. So I take buses from Barichara, Colombia, all the way to Bogota. I take a flight from Bogota to Dallas, Texas. And within 24 hours from being in the middle of nowhere, I'm in the ICU in Dallas, Texas. Being here, I wasn't aware of how critical the situation was. And after 10 days, I was planning on going back to travel, and the doctor says, well, she's not out of the woods yet, which kind of hit me like a ton of bricks. And I canceled my flight and decided to treat Dallas as another stop on my journey. So I'm in the hospital during the day with my mom, and in the evenings I'm going to Deep Ellum or going to parks or trying to see Dallas the way I would any city in Latin America. I actually even have the best tacos in Dallas. Well, as time went on, she ended up progressing tremendously, and now she's in better shape now than you were before. And also what was so incredible is my whole family came to visit her while she was in the hospital. So I got to see this family I had spent so much time thinking about during this interlude. Well, as she gets better, I begin almost a new intention on my journey, and it becomes more of a spiritual one. And as I decide to go back traveling again, this time my intention is travel into enlightenment. Let's figure it out. I hit the road, and I'm now using my Jewish background in terms of challenging all of my beliefs. And I'm reading a lot of spiritual books, and one of the books talks a lot about muscle testing. I don't need to tell anybody here who knows Dr. Berman about muscle testing. So I spend another 3 months in Colombia, another 50 days in Ecuador, and I get to Peru, and then I do something crazy. I go to the jungle, but that wasn't the crazy thing. I decide to let muscle testing decide every decision in my life. It's another commitment. So I'd wake up in the morning, I would muscle test if I should get out of bed. I'd muscle test what clothes to wear. I'd muscle test if I should leave the hostel. I'd walk out the door, muscle test if I should go left or go right or go straight, just to see where it would go. And I'm being led on these incredible adventures. It's always working out. And so I continue with the muscle testing. I'm asking all these questions, and it takes me all the way to Antarctica. And I get to Antarctica, and I go on this cruise ship, and we get down to a place where they allow for the polar plunge. And the water is 2.4 degrees Celsius. So I line up with like 70 other people for the polar plunge, and they had one rule: you are not allowed to go naked. Well, this I even had to ask, so I muscle test, should I jump in the water naked? And I come back strong. So of course I doubt it and dust it again, and it comes back strong again. I throw off my bathing suit, I throw it underneath the bench, I got my robe on, I get to the front of the line, I reveal myself, and the guy looks at me and he goes, "There's always one." So he lassos me in, because in case you can't get back, they got to pull you in. I leap from the boat, I land in the water, they pull me back in. I remember as I landed too, I thought to myself, this isn't so cold. And as I turned to find the ladder, I thought, this is freezing, get me out of here. I come back on the boat, and little did I know that word would spread, and I would then get celebrity status. And I remember one of the, there was a Filipino crew member that sees me coming down the stairs. He leans over and he goes, "You're the guy!" So I go from Antarctica, and it takes me to Torre del Paine. And in Torre del Paine, I would go to an ATM machine and simply muscle test how much money to take out. I take out roughly $100, and after renting all the camping equipment and getting food and everything else, I'm down to like 30, and then after I enter the park, I've got $10 left. The problem is the boat, to go back to the front of the park, is $25, and there's no credit card machine for the boat. And there's no ATMs along the route. And at each of the stops, it was supposed to be like $11 a night. So now I don't know what to do, and I'm starting to doubt. And meanwhile, I'm carrying a 55-pound backpack the first 7 kilometers to the entrance because I can't afford the van to take me there. And I don't know what to do, but I'm trying to have faith. And I get to the end. I get to the entrance of the park. I'm just kind of dumbfounded. But I always think, you know what? It's gotten me this far. I'll figure it out. And at that moment, a Jeep pulls up with 3 of my German friends from Antarctica. They stay with me in the first campsite. They give me money, and I pay all their night fees on my credit card. So within 2 days now, I'm flush with cash, no problems, and I finish the hike without any issues. I then also would get to the point of I'd be looking on a map for which places to go to next. And so it's how I ended up in Achacachi, Bolivia. And I would continue on from random place to random place, all letting the muscle testing guide whichever way I would go. As I continued on this path, what I was finding is my awareness of my surroundings and the viewpoint I was taking on life was shifting dramatically, because it was better than I could have planned or than I had planned. And the muscle testing, it was like traveling with Gary Berman. I could ask it questions and I would get incredible answers at times where I would look at it in shock almost, in disbelief, and test it, but constantly blindly follow it. And it was guiding me the whole time in a way where it got to the point to where I would stop muscle testing as much and focus more on trying to feel the answers before I would have to do this. And there were moments on the journey where I would feel lost and like I don't know where I'm going. And what was happening is it was training me more and more to focus more and more on the present and not the future or the past. And this was quite incredible, because then I just sort of took the belief that it will always work out perfectly. And I would even test which beliefs were good viewpoints to have on my travels. And I went from being someone who identified with the expression instant gratification takes too long, to changing that to being the most patient. And some of the realizations I was coming up with was, in order for me to get closer to God, I thought, well, I'm close with people who I think like-minded with, so let me focus on trying to have like-minded beliefs as the God that I believe in. So it was becoming the most compassionate and the most patient and the most understanding, the most tolerant. And what I was finding is my viewpoint on the world and my judgment of people and situations was radically changing. It would get to the point where I take a 20-hour bus ride and it was pleasant and almost blissful. Whatever happened, even if I slept in a place with mosquitoes, it didn't bother me anymore. So what I was finding was all of these things that I thought I needed, I no longer needed. And then what was happening is it was helping me in terms of learning languages, as well as anything I pretty much wanted to. So what I would do is I would focus on, in terms of Spanish, is just focus that I already know how to speak Spanish, and just constantly create and reinforce that belief and continue in my travels as if I know what I'm talking about. And then I began to see evidence for that. And even when I got to Brazil and it was all in Portuguese, and I thought, wow, I do not know any Portuguese, it made me aware of how much Spanish I knew when I first got to Mexico, because I didn't even know how to count to 10 or how to say, where's the bathroom? And I would continue on meeting new and interesting people along the way, and each time I would muscle test this cab is a good cab for me to get into, this person means me no harm. I had zero problems in my entire time in Latin America. I had one problem in Colombia, and that was before the muscle test. And so as my travels progressed, and they kept lengthening and lengthening, my intention and shift and my focus switched from really what it was before was sort of wealth, money, power, to now it is a spiritual path. It has been significantly more rewarding. And I remember from, I think my best day stock trading, I made 125 grand in one day. And it doesn't even compare to a single day of travel. It's not even the top 2,000 days of my life. And that was quite a profound change and shift. And the big one now is, there were so many things that I thought, I can't do this. There's no way I can do this. I can't travel alone. What am I going to do? I don't know what I'll do. To now, the viewpoint is I can do anything. And so it's a simple shift in belief systems now. It's like, okay, how would I do that? Okay, I need to learn Chinese in a year. Okay, what do I need to do? I can do it. That's easy. What do I need to do? All right, well, I can move to China. I can start taking classes. No longer is there any obstacle that I find I can't surpass or can't overcome. And so it really feels like the sky is the limit And now by not planning anything, I said to my brother when he asked me, so what are your plans? I said, there are no plans. Because if 3 years ago you said you have unlimited resources, plan out whatever life you want, I couldn't have planned out as good of a life as I'm enjoying right now. So I might as well just stop resisting and see where I end up. And so far, even though my viewpoints have all changed and the way I see the world is totally different, I'm still here, and I'm doing better than I ever have.
Where is this taking you next? Where do you go next?
So the focus, one of the things I did on my travels is I journaled, I think, 400-something days in a row, and I blogged before that. So the idea now is to put this experience into a book. And I will return to Israel coming up, although I haven't bought any plane tickets yet, because my muscles told me not to. And that's okay, but I sort of know it'll all work out. And right now the book is the next step, and after that I have no idea.
Josh, now that you use muscle testing so much, do you have a better instinct for answers without muscle testing?
Yeah, so that was very interesting because when you would ask it neutral, in a neutral format, so it wouldn't be like, oh, I can have a chocolate cake, strong. It was more of not caring what the answer is. And so by not living through my ego, but now through the muscle testing or through spirit, I was finding that I was able to identify more and more where the spirit was taking me and guiding me. And so there's plenty of time, and then I would focus on not even having to do the muscle test, but simply even feeling it before I got my hands together. And then there were times when I would take a step and be like, whoa, not that way. I mean, it would be like loud and clear. And even now I'm aware more and more of, in some way I'm testing less, because I find if I don't need to know the answer right now, it's my own consciousness, my own ego trying to ask the question. So what I'll do is if it's like, oh, what should I eat tomorrow? I don't even bother testing that. I'll deal with that tomorrow when I get to that point. And by focusing more and more on the present, my awareness of life in general has just gone up dramatically. I remember at one point on my journey, I muscle tested sort of no more phone. So I put my phone down, and I'm sitting there in this hostel, and I'm thinking, well, what time is it? I probably should get food. And then it's like, well, wait a second. I shouldn't eat by time. I should eat by, do I feel hungry or not? And so time, in a sense, stopped at that moment. And then when I would sit down at the restaurant, the first thing I'd do would be pulling out my phone and looking at it. And then there was no phone to pull out, and I became aware of that feeling inside me that, give me that phone. And then, so I would sit there instead and look around and kind of be patient. And then I would start to become aware of the restaurant, the design, the style, how the food was prepared, any little thing you can imagine. And what was happening is my understanding of, in a sense, in the world was broadening, because now I would, if I decided to view the world as an artist, I would look at the colors people used, or the different shadings of different buildings, or how the wood and the stone fit together, whatever it was in that regard. If I put in a musician viewpoint, it would be focusing on hearing, not so much judging the sound of the music I'm hearing, but just hearing the different sounds. And I met one musician. He said there's these machines they have that make sugarcane juice. And they put the sugarcane in, and it kind of grinds it up. And this musician said to me, oh, I love the sound of that machine. It goes pop, 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 pop. And I thought I never even heard the sound before, because my viewpoint wasn't a musician viewpoint. So now it's like, okay, I just have to take the viewpoint of whatever it is I want to become. And it was almost like, if you want to be happy, just do what happy people do. sort of the same principle applied to anything for that matter, whether it be architecture or building or design. So I've had a real shift in terms of even my own abilities, in terms of what I think I can do, as opposed to before when I thought, well, this is the way I am. I'm impatient, or I need things to be done this way, or I was very set in my ways. Whereas now I find by not being set in my ways and challenging those strict viewpoints, anything is possible. And you begin to see things very differently. No longer is this an ugly chair. It then becomes a chair. And then it becomes is. And so you're seeing it without any labels. And it's almost more clear. I don't know how to describe it. But you see things better without judging them in that way. And I found it a lot with people, as opposed to looking at someone and saying, oh, this person is poor or rich or attractive or a snob. They are. And then my approach to them was even different. So, yeah.
Final question for me. How did you make the transition from the doer? Because I remember you doing so many different things. You would get the job done, you would go from one thing to another, and then when you went to South America, you became the person who allowed. Do you remember when that changed?
I would have to say it probably changed when I committed to the muscle testing, because then it was, all right, let's see what happens. Yeah, I think when I committed to the muscle testing and decided to go wherever it took me, that even if it took me to skinny dipping in Antarctica, I was going to go and not resist. And now I find the resistance that I used to hold really kept me from fully enjoying the experience. When I sat in the bus and for 20 hours and had a pleasant experience, I thought I could not have done this 2 years earlier.
Good. Any other questions?
Yeah.
Just to clarify, you're doing this muscle testing?
So the one I was doing it like this, the 2 OK signs.
Gotcha.
Just kind of.
Right on.
Yeah. Yeah, that some people do with a pinky or with a middle finger. Yeah, I think for each person do what it feels comfortable. It was like self-guiding. It was almost like a dialogue, I was like made aware of what was the next step. It really felt like a Gary Berman with me the entire time.
Maybe he was.
More ways than one.
Well, I would check in periodically, of course, when the muscles told me to.
Very good. Any other questions? Okay, so who's going to join him on his next trip?
You're all invited.
Josh, thank you.
Josh,
Oh, yeah?
Portuguese is different from Spanish, definitely.
Portuguese is different. There is some similarities. I found also, that expression, your third language is easier than your second to learn? And it makes more sense because I was able to hear slight differences, but instead of, when I was learning Hebrew, I had to hear the word exactly as I knew it.
But I was born in Brazil.
Ah, okay.
I was born in São Paulo.
Oh, okay.
And I lived 25 years of my life in Panama.
Oh, wow, okay.
Okay? I was in Colombia, Medellin and Cali. I was in Buenos Aires. I was in different countries. And each country is different. And people, you deal with people, you get your instinct, your spirit tells you more or less what the personality of the people there.
Yeah.
That is the experience I had
Yeah.
with different people. Now, in Israel, I've been in Israel a couple of times because my parents are from Israel. And in Israel, it's very difficult to get similar personalities because you see people from all over the world, but still the intelligence is there.
Yeah,
You can build them.
yeah. Yeah, Israelis, well, you have a lot of Russians there, and they were very educated when they came. Yeah.
Then you're going back to Israel.
Yeah, at some point. I don't have the ticket yet. but
When
I'll-
you're ready, you will.
Yeah.
Because the boat is waiting for you.
All right.
Might have a good travel companion over there.
Afterwards.